Hey folks, my name's Ed Travers. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest serving in the beautiful parish of St. Margaret of Scotland that sits on the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, Gwe. I've talked on this channel before about my writer's block, probably once or twice anyway. And as I made mention in those videos, writer's block for me, being creative, offering these reflections, oftentimes, well, sometimes it's a matter of my anxiety, sometimes it's a matter of my depression, sometimes it's a matter that I can't seem to get out of my own way. More often than not, though, it's that I simply have too much to say. And when I have so many ideas and so many things, I end up juggling them to the point that my perfectionism, my desire, chronic desire for perfectionism gets in the way and literally stops me from offering. Well, if I can't do this, if I can't do that, if I can't do that, if I can't say this, can't do that, I better not do anything. Or I just literally burn out. Our world today, and I've noticed this over the last few months, mass shooting, civil rights being violated, Supreme Court changing the rules, another mass shooting, politician says something stupid, conspiracy theorist gains power, another mass shooting. It seems like news is always sort of just raining down on us, and there's no place we can go to be protected from it. We're just continuously being inundated by new horrible things. Some of that is that that's really just how the media works today. It sells. And because it sells, they're going to keep us in this state of anxiety, in this state of irritation and frustration, this state of not knowing what to do with ourselves, this state of fear and terror, because it makes them money. Part of it is just we have access to all this information. And a person who has a compassionate, an empathetic, a merciful, a loving heart, who has access to all this information, they want to know what's going on. Because that compassionate, merciful, empathetic heart calls them to lend themselves to these issues. But there's too much. And really quickly, what can set in is compassion fatigue. There is too much happening. There's too many things that I need to be involved in. There's too many things that I need to give myself to. There are too many injustices. There are too many inequalities. There are too many tragedies that are happening in the world, and I can't give myself to all of it. And then we burn out. I might be the only one that's feeling this way. I doubt it, though. I suspect a lot of folks are feeling this way. I know the people on this channel. I know you to be loving, compassionate, giving people. I've experienced your mercy. I've experienced your grace. I suspect your desire to be merciful and graceful to everyone in this world weighs heavily on you. So it's important that we accept our place in the world. It's important that we prepare ourselves not to turn off our access to what's going on. We need to know what's going on, but it's important that we turn off our desire to be involved in absolutely everything, to learn how to say the word no, to learn how to put up a barrier and a boundary and say, that's just beyond me. It doesn't lessen my impact. It doesn't lessen who I am. It doesn't lessen my purpose. But my purpose is contained here. Jesus, in the Gospel of Luke, like right around the middle of the book, right in the middle of his ministry, right in the middle of teaching the disciples and teaching the people of his territory, of his communities, all these wonderful lessons about God, it says he turns his eyes to Jerusalem. It was time for him to prepare for the crucifixion. And that's what he set his sight on. There were all kinds of things he could have gotten involved with. There were all kinds of things in the world that he could have gotten involved with, and he said, no, this is what I need to do. This is where I'm supposed to go. So if you're out there and you're feeling overwhelmed, like I sometimes feel overwhelmed, I would encourage you to take up your purpose. Take up your cross. Do what it is that you are called to do. What it is that you're called to do might be to organize a rally in your city that leads thousands of people into the streets to protest, that leads to a mass change in some fashion. What you may be called to do might be to take your neighbor a meal, to walk your neighbor's dog, to feed your neighbor's cat. Maybe what you're called to do is to write a letter of affirmation and validation. A letter that says, hey, I've been thinking about you, and I love you. You're special to me, and you're doing wonderful things. Maybe what you're called to do is to read the local library, to read to your nieces and your nephews or your grandchildren. Maybe what you're called to do is to be a voice of reason and calm in the place that you work or in the places where you play. I don't know. But be the person you are called to be, because it's enough and it's important and it matters. Before I go, I want to tell you this really quick story now. I don't know how you feel about D.L. Moody, and I don't know how you feel about Billy Graham. The point of the story is not to elevate either of these two people. The point of the story is to show you the importance of one person's decision. D.L. Moody was working as a shoe salesman. And one day a guy walked in. D.L. Moody sold him a pair of shoes. The guy walked out. On the way out, the guy, who was an evangelical Christian back in the 1800s when it meant something completely different than what it means today, he thought, you know what, I did not take up the opportunity to share with this young man my testimony of how Jesus Christ has moved in my life. So the guy worked himself up. He convinced himself that it was time. He girded his loins, and a few days later he went back in and he sat with that young shoe salesman again, and he said, I want to tell you about my relationship with Jesus. That conversation changed the young shoe salesman's life. That young man became one of the most prominent evangelical preachers of the 1800s. D.L. Moody, Dwight L. Moody, went on to found universities to speak to millions of people live. From there, at one of his talks, there was another man. In that talk, the man gave himself to life, gave himself to Christ after hearing D.L. Moody's preaching, after hearing D.L. Moody's call. The man gave himself over to Christ. That man went on later on in the early 1900s. That man went on, and he wanted to launch his own Christian evangelical crusade. And he enlisted the help of athletes and business people and celebrities. And one day that crusade, that little crusade that he put together, went into a small town. And in that small town, the ears of a boy heard what was being said in that tent, in that Christian church. That boy took the lesson that day, accepted the call that Jesus placed on his heart. He went on to become Billy Graham, who spoke to billions of people. It's not about Billy Graham, it's not about D.L. Moody. This story is about that man who went back into the shoe store because he felt called to do it. Through that man, millions of people heard about the love of God. That one person doing that one small but courageous and incredibly important act literally changed the world. Whatever it is you are called to do, regardless of how big you consider it to be or how minuscule you consider it to be, it is of immense importance in this world. It is of immense importance in this world. Do it with gusto. Do it with pride. It's going to make a difference. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you. May you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that we will set our eyes on the call that's been offered to us, that we will set our eyes on the mission that we have been offered, no matter what that mission happens to be, that we will know deep down in our hearts that everything we do, when we do it for love, when we do it in response to the divine's call, will make huge impacts, positive impacts on this world. Amen. Nemultus.